Yes, sir. No,
Yes, he did. Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook. Great to have you with us. And special announcement, Kwofe Coleman, who next year will be the new president and CEO of the Muni, will be joining us on Next Up and answering our questions. Just thinking about the Muni makes it seem like summer is almost here. And here she is, Ms. Sunshine herself, the news director for the Big 550 KTRS and the co-host of the Jennifer and Wendy Show, Wendy Wiese, along with Mr. Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and Ray Hartmann from rawstory.com and the Big 550 KTRS and the Riverfront Times. And we welcome the news editor for the St. Louis American, Mr. Alvin Reid. And Bill, we're going to start with you. Today, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment voted 2-1. That would be Comptroller Darlene Green and newly elected Mayor Tashara Jones voting to take $4 million out of the St. Louis Police Department and move it to homeless, housing, and other social services. Among other things, 98 vacancies, including 6 lieutenants, 25 sergeants, and 67 police officers, will not be filled. Yesterday, the Ethical Society of Police, which represents some minority police officers, decried the move, saying that response times are already slow and it's difficult to do community policing. It won't be easier if the force is reduced in any way. So what do you think about this?
Well, I agree with the Ethical Society, who said that there's a right now problem in St. Louis, and the idea of, well, we're going to work on homelessness and this and that. That's great, and I hope we take some of the money from the federal government that we're getting for COVID relief and put it toward those things. But right now there is a crime problem, and I don't think that cutting the police department at all helps. And this, the positions that have been unoccupied for a long time have been used for overtime pay. And now if that's gone so that the police can't get overtime, I think that the Ethical Society is right that it's hard to solve the crime problem with fewer police officers.
I think
Go ahead.
I think Tashara Jones is right. I think that, first of all, it doesn't even matter what we think. She got elected, and her most important priority.
Ask what we think, Ray, and that's the only reason I said it.
What's that? Well, I get it. I think what we think is not nearly as consequential as what the voters of St. Louis elected her. The most important priority for her, as it was for all the candidates in the race, was addressing the crime problem. She has a different view than many folks do, including Louis Reed, who lost, by the way, and who voted against this, which is that the solution has got to start being the resources. It's not defunding the police. We still have a robust police department in the city, but that the resources have got to be more to causes.
It's reducing the funding.
Let me just finish. She wants to address the causes. She's doing what she was elected to. She's responsible for outcomes. It would be completely wrong for her to have come in on that platform, which I happen to agree with, and then just turn around and say, nah, never mind, we'll just do business as usual. The one thing we know for sure is that the status quo has not worked in the city of St. Louis, and I applaud her for trying something different.
This is like having an acute case of appendicitis and trying to treat it without the surgeon anywhere in the operating room. I don't understand this. I know that this was the promise that she made. This is the promise that she's keeping. But you were talking about the fact that Louis Reed lost the election. He sounded pretty formidable today, when he said that if you take the money away, if you take the overtime away, that's going to put more lives at risk because of the response times, and the police officers who are not there, and the police officers who will not be paid overtime to be there in the place of the police officers who should be there. It doesn't make any sense when we are officially like Dodge City at this point, Ray.
She brought in Dan Isom, who I have not, and I'm assuming I haven't talked to him, but I assume he's part of this decision. And so she's surrounding herself with good people. What Tashara Jones as mayor is going to be judged on is the outcome. And I think you've got to respect. She won. She's got to.
Alvin?
No, I think with the city police department, okay, I think that if we honestly logged time and who's at work and who's at a desk making $120,000 and hadn't done anything for the last 10 years, I think you could find that $4 million. I mean, besides beating up their own and getting sued 9 ways to Sunday, and then the whole horrific, incident where the young lady police officer was killed by people that are supposed to be on duty, and there's always ongoing people lying about overtime. I think the $4 million can be found. Now, if it's up to the mayor's office to do that, or is it up to now, like say Dan Isom to do that? Well, then fine. I think you can find the $4 million. What happens though, and I kind of feel like what happens if out of the blue, 150, 200 well-qualified individuals decided they wanted to become police officers? How do you pay them? How do you employ them? Maybe that's where some of the stimulus money or the COVID money will come from. But I think they can find this $4 million. So before everybody starts arguing, find the $4 million.
Alvin is onto something. This was a political move. It was a signal because the mayor has $517 million coming in. She could have funded homeless and housing and social services through that. And $4 million out of a $170 million police budget is not the end of the world. But she was trying to send a signal of some sort, which I thought was interesting.
Which is fine.
Hang on. Last September, Chief Hayden goes to Jefferson City and he begs for a change in the residency requirement. Here's a quote. "We desperately need more officers," he told lawmakers. Now, what has happened since then?
So why did he flip-flop? Is he trying to keep his job?
Well, wait a minute. The point is this. Look, first of all, it isn't like she just didn't do anything with the money. She's spending more money on the housing trust fund. She's trying to address the causes of crime. And everybody keeps saying, yeah, this is all great. She won, but don't do what you ran on.
No.
Shifting resources.
Ray, nobody is saying that. Everybody is agreeing that she ran on that campaign. The question is it smart right now? And I'm saying,
when is it gonna be smart?
Addressing the problems of crime and the root causes, that might help in 10 years.
No, she didn't run on addressing it in 10 years.
But wait a minute, Ray.
She didn't run on doing it in 10 years.
Okay, let's reverse this argument. Wait, let's reverse this argument.
I hope you don't have to call 911 anytime soon,
the crazy stuff that comes out of our state legislature. Wait, the crazy stuff that comes out of our state legislature, you shouldn't have an argument with, because the people who vote for that crazy stuff say, I was elected to back this crazy stuff. My constituents like crazy.
Like Josh Hawley, right?
Yeah. So I mean,
okay, we got to move on. Great points made by everyone. Made great points, but I will point out that today's Philadelphia Inquirer points out Philadelphia is building a new police substation in Kensington, one of its most crime-ridden neighborhoods.
Now, isn't that the Alvin idea? Haven't I said that? The new police station should be in the middle of North St. Louis. State of the art.
There will be. She didn't ever say she's abolishing the police.
Okay, Alvin. This week, the mayor, along with the circuit attorney, and Congressman Cori Bush and Sam Page, the county executive, took a tour of both jails in the city of St. Louis. And they all seemed to indicate that what they saw was not humane, although independent photographers or members of the press did not accompany them. It didn't convince Sam Page enough, however, to accept inmates or residents from the jails in the city of St. Louis in the St. Louis County Jail. The idea was floated in the press late last week. And then by midweek, we had 3 members of the St. Louis County Jail Task Force, including 3 liberals, former State Senator Jeff Smith, Tim McBride of the Brown School at WashU, and the Reverend Philip Duvall. And they all said, no, thank you. We don't have enough corrections officers. We are not taking inmates from the city. What do you think of all this?
Well, Charlie, they're residents, and we have, the county is not struggling for residents right now, so you can keep those in the city. I think that if you're going to go and try to get honest answers, be it from correctional officers or prisoners themselves, I don't think having a full media contingent is a very good idea. And so I don't have a problem with not a lot of media representation. I think we do have to rely on those that went in to be honest and say what they saw. But I mean, it's kind of like, all right, you've got two places where we house people, and both of them have problems. One is probably going to be closed, and we could debate that again in another half hour. But I think this is just one of those, like, we're going to do something. Let's take the tour so we can say we went, we listened, and now this is what we're going to do. I fix the locks, okay, and then other than that, do what you got to do.
I don't think a tour by public officials is going to be a very in-depth fact-finding thing. I think it would be better to let the media go with them personally. As far as St. Louis County, though, let me stick up for Page in the county. The county, just because the county is concerned and looks and takes part, which I think was, by the way, a good thing that the county and city people went together. If you're going to have that kind of photo op, the St. Louis County made a responsible decision based on its capacity to accept prisoners. It wasn't a question of its willingness. And I think they made a great point. It's not just about the physical capacity of the jail, which people focus on, but if we don't have the officers, we don't have the personnel to handle more people properly, and it doesn't run itself. I think they made a totally responsible decision to saying we don't have the capacity. I don't think
I agree. But now will the inmates or residents go to Kentucky?
Well, I think what they've done is, haven't they put out a request for proposals in like a 50-mile radius? Yeah. I think they're handling it fine. Let's see what they get. But I mean, I don't think that it's just because the county's concerned. I don't think you can put on Sam Page saying, "Oh, you're not."
What Reverend Duvall said is
capacity. They don't have it.
He said it's the math. He said it's basic math.
Right.
He's right. Yeah, we just don't have the space. And I do agree with you, Ray, that I think in terms of transparency, and if the mayor and if Congresswoman Cori Bush, if they see a real humane issue here, why not document it with members of the media? This looks like an agenda that's being driven, and with no balance, and that turns people off. I think, not that they care.
I just touring jails and prisons. I don't know how do you tell the inmates to go wait in the hall while you videotape their prison cell, or did they eat the food? I just don't know what it accomplishes. Other than just being able to say I was there.
That's an interesting point.
Charlie,
I will say that they did complain that the food wasn't good. Mystery meat was being served, but that's easily correctable. You wouldn't shut down the workhouse because the food's bad. Just get a new caterer, right?
I would agree.
So I didn't come away with the impression that they had enough evidence justifying the closing of the workhouse, but I'm not disagreeing that conditions at the city jail in downtown St. Louis could be extremely bad, because that's what I'm hearing from people who've had family members there. I think the city jail is probably worse than the workhouse overall.
Charlie, aren't you fighting the last war here? I mean, they're going to close the workhouse. She ran on it. She's announced it. They're closing it. We can argue it every week about whether she should. I don't think it's a broken record on this.
Do you want to know what I think? One of the main reasons that the workhouse is going to be closed, it's because we still call it the workhouse.
Maybe.
And if we had overcome that 40 years ago, I think things might be different. But it just has such an ugly connotation that people who, if you ask, should the St. Louis City workhouse be closed? And we just asked people in another state who knew nothing about St. Louis, they would say, yeah, if you got a workhouse, your first image is like Oliver or, something like that.
Yeah. Yes, hey, out of Charles Dickens. It's
right.
That we're sending people to the
workhouse.
Good point.
Maybe we should. Okay, let's move on to you, Ray Hartmann. The land of Lincoln and McClellan, Illinois was one of 3 states to lose population, according to the recent census. Illinois joins West Virginia and Mississippi and Puerto Rico, as it turns out, losing population. It was the first time since Illinois had lost population since 1818. It'll lose 1 congressional seat. It'll have 17. There was a time in the 1940s when Illinois had 27 congressional seats. Missouri is going to hold steady, but in terms of growth, it's 39 out of 47 states in increasing population. So the show me state really can't brag too much, Ray. But I'm concerned about Illinois. I don't think it can reverse this. I think that between property taxes and the debt and future income tax increases, people are just not moving to states like that. They're moving to Texas and Florida, and they're going to Idaho and Utah and North Carolina and places where they just don't have that kind of tax policy.
I don't think people are moving. I mean, I'm not saying no one, but I don't think people are moving for tax policy reasons. First of all, tax policies can change in any state. I think climate and lots of things affect people's decision to move far more than that. Of course, I mean, we could always just relocate the workhouse people in a colony in Missouri, in Illinois, to increase the population that way. I don't think it's a significant number, okay? I don't think a state, to me, it's all about, like in Missouri, I could care less whether Missouri goes up or down or stays the same. It's a question of quality of life, quality of environment, the air you breathe, getting let out of the schools. I mean, there are things that matter about a community and where people live. I don't think, to me, if you could say, oh, wow, we could raise the population of St. Louis County, I don't know why that would be either good, bad, or indifferent, personally.
I think it would be great. I think we need more immigrants here who would start businesses and employ people. I think we're kind of Deadsville in many ways. I mean, it's the same. You're just not finding a vibrance in our area, which would be enhanced with new blood moving into the area.
I think Charlie, I was just looking something up. That's why I had my head down. I apologize for that, but we can do that now on the Zoom, as they call it. Illinois has got a lot of temporary residents that are over there for an hour to 3 hours at a time, leaving behind, just in the marijuana, about $500 million, okay? All right. Another thing, Collinsville itself has made millions of dollars on the local tax, all right, from legalized marijuana. This week, I made my first legal bet over at the casino, $5 across the board on a horse in the Kentucky Derby. Illinois has got a lot going on that we don't. And the whole idea where they lost a congressional seat, by the way, not in urban Chicago area or, it's someplace else, then it's just not a big deal. Illinois is doing better than Missouri is. And if you doubt that, that's just wrong. I'm sorry.
I think not. Atlantic City's had gambling forever, and look what's happened there. Wendy, bring some common sense to this discussion, please.
Are you comparing Washington Avenue to the Magnificent Mile? I mean, I think that I think the pandemic has clouded everything. And I have not visited Chicago in a while, and usually we go fairly frequently. But I am not gonna lose any sleep tonight when I put my head on the pillow worrying about Chicago and its future. And a lot of this could be just demographic. I mean, baby boomers, they do migrate south every so often. And so I'm sure that tax policy does have something to do with it for some of them. But I'm not as concerned about Illinois as you are, Charlie. I'm sorry. I know that's not common sense.
Well, I would
Charlie?
say if you take a look at the states, I mean, it's not all southern states because you got Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, Utah. They're all booming. North Carolina is further south, but man, they've got nonstops at their airport at Charlotte to every major capital in the world. And Apple just announced it's going to build 3,000 jobs there in the Research Triangle. I think Missouri and Illinois, we're losing out. We're just losing out.
There is a scenery thing too, Charlie. I mean, like if you go to, to Yellowstone Park or something, or up in places in Utah and Montana, it's just knock your socks off lovely. And on that level, Missouri and Illinois can't compete. I mean,
Well, and Charlie, the one thing I will say is significant to a state is when it loses a congressional seat. But even that, you can't tell. For example, in terms of the politics, a lot of Democrats were really worried that Texas was going to get 3 seats and Florida was going to get 2, ended up being 2 and 1. And the other thing, like in Illinois lost a seat, but it may not lose a Democratic seat. It depends on how redistricting goes. If it's a couple of Republicans in Southeast Missouri squaring off against each other, it might not affect the landscape as much. And that could go either way in any state. California lost the first state in its seat in its history. But that's the most significant thing, and nobody really can predict how that's going to go. I just think the focus on more population is overrated compared to the quality of life within any community.
Very well. Let's move on to a couple of quality life issues with you, Wendy Wiese. First of all, there's a measure which, if passed in Jefferson City, would say that people would be able to enter a house of worship with a firearm, couldn't be stopped. In other words, the Second Amendment would carry into a church or a temple. This week, there was a press conference that included Rabbi Amy Fader and Archbishop Mitchell Rosansky, and they said, no, we don't like this legislation. And yet, we have had about 142 mass shootings in this country since President Biden took office, including 46 in this month alone. That's where more than 4 people have been shot at a time. Don't you think it's prudent for someone to conceal carry under a sport coat, a blazer, just while, worshiping at the same time?
I think that this does not mean, I don't think that the resistance on the part of these religious leaders indicates that they don't want any protection. They might have security undercover. They might have someone designated, and that is within their rights and their responsibilities as religious leaders to do that, to protect their congregation. I have no problem with that at all. I do have a problem with letting anybody enter a house of worship with an AK-47, or I'm being facetious, and I shouldn't be, but I don't think that anybody should be able to take a gun into a church. I think that the church is responsible for the security of its congregation, but that doesn't mean allowing anybody and everybody to pack heat when they are going to communion.
I think it's a non-issue. I mean, I think that if a responsible gun owner who just doesn't feel comfortable without, having his weapon on him, who can go to church and nobody's going to know he has a gun. And the person who's going in there with the intent to shoot it up, he's going to take his gun in anyway. I mean, one of those things where if you were in church, you wouldn't know whether there's 2 people in here with weapons or 5 or none. I mean, so it's kind of getting excited about nothing, I think.
I think it's something. I'll tell you what, it's not what it is. and I can't believe people will see this, the Republicans' hypocrisy in this. What about separation of church and state? They're telling synagogues, churches, mosques, whoever, you cannot exclude people with guns. And it's like, these are the same people that wanted to allow, in the name of separation of church and state, they wanted to allow them to ignore public health guidance in the height of the pandemic. Because of church and state, they wanted a church to be able to say, heck, if we can spread COVID if we want to. And the response from government was, actually, no, you can't. You have to respect the same public health guidelines as the rest of us. All of a sudden, church and state, the government's telling a synagogue or a church they have to allow. If a church wants to put up a metal detector, that's up to them. I can't believe the government.
I'm not going to be going to any church where anybody in there has a gun. Because last time I looked, one of the leading codicils of even going to church is something called faith. All right. And I have enough of that. If something's going to happen in the church, well, then something's just going to happen in that church. And if you don't have enough faith, don't go. Just watch on TV. Joel Osteen. Send him your money. You don't
know if anybody has a gun in church. That's all.
I hear you, but but the idea that anybody could be allowed to come in there is just flat wrong. I mean, that's just wrong. That's just a tenet of worship, the way I see it. I mean, gosh, it's supposed to be about peace, and we're inviting mayhem in legally. That's reprehensible to me.
I was going to say, says the man who favored making a left-hand turn on a red light.
Yeah. He has no problems bringing gambling and marijuana into church.
Church brought gambling in long before I was born. Bingo games? Yeah. Come on.
All right. That's going to wrap it up for this week. But in just a moment, we're going to be joined by Kwofe Coleman. It was just announced by the Municipal Opera of St. Louis, the Muny, that Mr. Coleman will take over as president and CEO, replacing Denny Reagan. Mr. Coleman started there at the age of 16, and I think his debut interview, I think, will be next on Next Up. So don't touch that dial.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thank you for joining us for Next Up. This is where we interview community leaders, and we would like to welcome Kwofe Coleman, who, starting January 1st next year, will be the new president and CEO of the Muny. That's right. Just thinking about that makes me feel warm and ready for a lemonade or a beer in front of some great actors and dancing and music. And Mr. Coleman, let us be among the first to congratulate you on your new assignment. How are you?
Thank you. I'm wonderful, doing well. I'm excited for that part, but even more excited for the little bit more acute question of getting back to theater soon.
Well, absolutely. And you started at the Muny at the age of 16, 22 short years ago. Am I right?
That's correct. I was an usher and a wheelchair pusher those first years, struggling up that hill with wheelchairs. I was in far better shape, but it was a great introductory to the institution.
Wendy?
You are a graduate of the U-High. You are a Billiken. You went to Emory University, but this has got to be surreal to find yourself in this position. As you move forward, though, I think a lot of people would be curious. What is the number one thing that you will take away from watching your friend Dennis Reagan in this position for such a long time?
Gosh, there's a lot to take away from that. But number one is to care about people, and that's from inside the institution, our staff and the people we work with, but also the audience. What I've learned from Denny is that if you care about people and you treat them the right way, that type of energy will come back to you and come back to the institution. I think that a lot of the reason why the Muni is so beloved in St. Louis right now is because so many people identify the Muni with a great human being, with Denny. So I'll take that away for sure. With a number of other lessons, I've gotten the opportunity to work alongside him for a long time, and just understand how to run a place of this magnitude.
Kwofe, I'm one of the people who go to the regular the most famous shows. Like, I'll go see My Fair Lady or Oklahoma. This year, I'll probably see Sound of Music. But I noticed that you have Smokey Joe's Cafe on the menu this year. And it says that it's set in Gaslight Square. Is the original Smokey Joe's Cafe set in Gaslight Square, or are we just adapting it to St. Louis?
This is an adaptation to St. Louis. There was a production in Chicago that was adapted to a neighborhood there as well. Now, interestingly, in the research, our marketing team and our production team was doing some research 2 years ago now, because we planned to do it in 2020, and found that there was a Smokey Joe's Cafe. They saw an old sign for Smokey Joe's Cafe in Gaslight Square. So sometimes we have a chance to adapt the show or adapt the theme of it to feel local, to feel like home. And this is one of those opportunities.
I think I'll be at that one too. Okay, thank you.
We'll see you there.
Right.
Kwofe, my parents bought season tickets to Muni 72 years ago, and I grew up going to the shows. And speak to the challenge you face in bridging generations. I mean, here you are, barely older than this show, and you've got a real challenge ahead of you to keep the Muni relevant. How do you approach something that, the heritage bridges so many generations now?
Well, Ray, I don't know if I see it fully as a challenge, because we have this beautiful benefit, or this blessing that, exactly what you said, people have been coming with their parents and their grandparents, and people my age or this next generation. We're here and we're from here, so it's part of our tradition. The task we face is making sure that the content on stage feels relevant to them, and that doesn't mean just to put in new shows, but to make sure that the names and the faces they see on stage, and the way the whole experience is built, it feels something that's welcoming to the next generation. I think that we've done well to stay current in mixing the seasons. Bill talked about the Sound of Music's The Seven Brides, but there's also the On Your Feet, or the Chicago, so that you can kind of move through time. There is a lot of competition for the attention of people these days, but I think that the fact that there's something that feels first inherently St. Louis about sitting in the Muni under the stars, and it's just opportunity more than ever. We would like to get away from our screens. I think we can all say that a little bit. So, what we do and the way we do that allows, at least for me, I'm 38 years old, and as much of a digital generation as I am, I can't wait to have the opportunity to do something that's not in that way. So, you're right in that it is a different question, because for our parents and grandparents, there were fewer other things that they were looking to do. But I think that as long as we stay aligned with this community and stay a part of it, I think we also stay a part of the tradition.
Alvin?
Alvin's muted. Alvin, you're muted.
Alvin can't hear you.
Rookie mistake. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Rookie mistake. Hey, one quick question.
Sure.
Free seats forever, right?
Free seats forever as long as I'm there.
Okay, there we go. Okay, to follow up. All right, there will be all kinds of different, protocols, I'm sure, for the audience as we head into the summer. But I have dealt with artists, and I'm sure it's going to be tough, fulfilling the needs of the cast and crews that are traveling throughout the United States. So are you already running into that, and how is that shaping up?
So you're familiar with artists as we all are. And the truth is we have 9 labor unions, one of which represent the actors, for example, Actors Equity Association. So all of these unions have put out guidance, and we're in communication with them. The thing that I will say is true of all of these groups is everyone's trying to get back to work. Everyone has been out of work for a while. So, it's actually been a pretty good, I don't even say push and pull, just give and take of what's realistic and what needs to be done. The number one step is that we've talked to our artists a lot, and most of them, if not all, are gone the route of being vaccinated, and that certainly helps ease that question. So do we run into some hiccups from the guidelines that we've received? Yes, and it's easy, not easy, but it's necessary to say, well, that's just impossible. We can't produce theater in that way. The route we've taken as the Muni is we've put together guidelines and protocols that are what we know we can achieve, that will work across all 9 labor unions across the lot, and we present that to the city, we present that to these groups, and this is the environment we can provide. And if everyone is willing to come and work together, play together in that environment, we can bring theater back. We're all going to try our best to do this, and it's going to take a little bit of concession from every side. And we know it's going to take concession from the audience. It's not going to be the exact same if you're in a social distance scenario for a year. But if we all have to make a little bit of a sacrifice or adjustment so that we can put people back to work, we can come back together as a community, I think it's the right thing to ask.
So how will people be spaced this summer, if indeed they will be?
So we'll follow whatever the most current guidelines are. So as you guys know, it changes about every 48 to 60 seconds. And I don't say that as a criticism. It's just the reality. So we have this great software that allows us to remodel the house based on down to the inch. So we're working with the city right now. We have a little bit of a challenge in that we have to make our final determination come mid-May, but we're not scheduled to open until July. So there's that gap of time between what we decide and again what happens in the sliding scale of health. So everyone's tapping into their best crystal ball here to figure it out, but we'll follow whatever the health guidelines are for the city and by the CDC at that time. As you all saw, there's some real movement in outdoor guidance from the social distance. We have to be really clear. That people will read that you don't need a mask outdoors unless you're sitting in a stadium or a large group. So there'll be a lot of education and re-education we have to do. But the beauty of it is we're not trying to reinterpret or redefine science. Science is going to determine what we can do for people, and then we'll figure out how to live within those confines, not even confines, within those lanes.
St. Louisans, and you are obviously a St. Louisan, Kwofe, but we grapple with the label provincial, and yet when it comes to theater and when it comes to the arts, and your colleague Mike Isaacson, Denny Reagan, Fox and Associates. Am I incorrect in assuming that we have a pretty significant profile in the theatrical world? How would you like to see that profile enhanced, and how will you do that?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're the oldest and largest outdoor musical theater in the country. So just by our mere existence, we have that profile. And like you said, there's a lot of people in this company. Mike has produced incredibly successfully on Broadway. Denny is one of the longest tenured leaders in this industry. I've just started work. I'm also on the board, the president of the board for the National Alliance of Musical Theater. So we all work together in our lanes to keep the profile up. How do we grow that? We provide excellence in musical theater for the people of St. Louis, and that represents St. Louis on the map in that way. I think that we're a destination for the best and the brightest stars of musical theater on both sides of the stage. If you're a performer, there's nowhere else in the world you're going to do this under the stars for 11,000 people without social distancing on a night like this. And if you are, if you're a writer or you have a show, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to see your product or be part of a product on stage. So as long as we keep those doors as wide open and welcome people in from all corners, to do their art or present their art on our stage, I think that helps significantly. I think that we're part of those things that can change the narrative about St. Louis. Those of us that are here know the greatness of this community, but unfortunately that's not the story that's always told. But any of us that have a national platform through what we do, ours happens to be musical theater, we can show that excellence exists here, and we're proud to be a part of that.
Kwofe, I buy tickets per show. Like if this show sounds good, I might buy tickets or take my grandkids to the show. But once a year, my wife and I go with Peter and Ann Rexford, who have season tickets. And all the people around them have season tickets. And, and it's for like every Tuesday or it's for a day. How in the world are you going to deal with these people who have season tickets and they sit in the same place every year, and all of a sudden, if you can't fill the place up, how are you going to tell some of the people, well, your season tickets, we're not going to be able to honor this year?
Yes. No. So the plan in reality, if we get to a social distance scenario where we have to reduce the capacity, all those people, we'll give them access. We'll probably tier the system. So like if you sat in this section, that group will have access on a certain day to go back and pick new seats if we have to social distance and reduce the season. So, the truth is that this season will be different. It's not like if you pick for this season, those are your forever seats. No, it's for this 2021 season. So we'll give them access to do that, to select their seats. But of course, if it's not what they want to do, they also have the access to opt out and come back and get their regular seats.
Because these people that I'm talking about are so proud that they have had these seats for so many years, and that they sit next to these people. And it just sounds like I wouldn't want to be the ones to tell them that, well, Peter and Ann get to sit here, but Roger and Susie don't, or something.
I mean, people have had those for 6, 7 generations. My goal is, if when I have to tell them, I'm going to come back on this show and you guys can help me if you would like, and just.
Hey, I've got a suggestion for you. Call the St. Louis Cardinals, because they're the first one that have had to deal with that. Because I guarantee you, if every game is pretty much sold out, there are some people that aren't sitting where they normally sit. So they can give you some tips.
And all jokes aside, that tiered system I talk about is directly what they have done. It's exactly what the Cardinals have done. They've sold a month at a time and given access based on where you typically sit. And you go online and pick your new seats, and then you bring the next group in, next group in, next group. So that's the model that would be successful if we end up having to go that route. And people, like we said, it's going to be an adjustment for everybody. To have your same seats will be difficult. And Bill, you're 100% right. People love to come. Half of the experiences, you see this friend you see 7 times a summer, right? Talk to them and you hang out and you get the same concession stand. There will be some new temporary traditions formed. We still think that that's worth the opportunity to come back.
Okay.
Kwofe, how do you go about picking the shows? How does the Muni decide? Because it can be a controversial thing, as you know. And I'm just curious what your process is. And is this something is it in itself one of the traditions? And if so, or if not, do you see it changing? How do you go about doing it?
It's a mix. It's certainly partially or mainly a tradition in that the audience, there's a survey and the audience makes those selections. And I know far before my time, we do that in-house now, and there's a slip in the program, but far before my time, it was a survey that was in the Post-Dispatch for a long time. And so first and foremost, the community picks. Now, the 30 or so shows that end up on that survey are shows that we've looked at that we know that we would all be part of a great season, are available in the next year or in upcoming years. As you know, we produce, but we have to license these shows. So there are a number of questions that go into whether or not that show will be available in that next year. So we've looked at what's available. The audience picks what they like. We have a high ranking of 1 through 30, but then you also have to find 7 shows that make sense together. If I have Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast on the same survey, they're going to come in 1 and 2, but we're not going to do them in the same year. It just doesn't make sense to present those together. So to Bill's earlier point, you want a mix of classics and contemporary so that you're drawing from your audience. You want to tell different types of stories. You want something light. You want some shows that make you think a little more, that make you feel a little more. And you also want shows that make sure that you are presenting a representative product on stage that is inclusive to the community. So there's a lot of science that goes in it, but the ranking happens, and then we get in a room, and Mike and Denny and I spend a good amount of time in a room narrowing that down, and then we have a repertory committee on our board of directors, and we present usually a slate of 7 or or 8, and that's how we come up with it. It's a little bit different this year because we're just doing the shows we were supposed to do last year, so we didn't do that this time around, but that's typically how it goes.
Well, that led into what I was going to ask, Ray, perfectly. I'm just going to ask you, okay, all right, your three favorite, we're going to, Mr. Coleman, your 3, I can tell you mine, but 2, you can do Guys and Dolls every year, okay, first of all. And then another one, maybe a little less seen, got 5 guys named Mo, but your 3, you're heading off with the top 3.
3 favorite shows. Aida's on there. We did the last Aida we did was great, but the one we did in 2005 sticks in my mind. And maybe it was like the first time I was a really young kid really paying attention. So Aida's on the list. Les Mis, which we did in 2013, I believe was the last time we did Les Mis. Another phenomenal production. And then we did The Wiz in 2018. So I think those 3, I think, and all for different reasons. Like I said, Aida just stuck in my mind. That production of Les Mis really, to me, was one of those moments where you could see the magnitude of how we can present something on such a large stage in this kind of environment. And I think The Wiz is important to do shows that I think speak culturally to different segments of our community. And I thought that it was important and special to be able to do that in our centennial season.
Kwofe, in 2019, Tina Turner, the musical, opened on Broadway, but of course it was cut short last year because of the pandemic. Presumably it's going to open again soon, but is it possible that the Muny, because of her connections to St. Louis, might mount a production of Tina Turner, the musical, in the next couple of years?
I mean, it would all come down to the availability of the license. In truth, that Tina, the show is incredibly popular in its short run. So I don't think there's too much concern about the popularity of it, especially also given that connection to St. Louis. But when you have a show like that that's either running on Broadway or it's still touring, our ability to get that license is slim to none at that point. So in the next couple of years, maybe not, but that's all a model that may be slightly different because we're not all coming back from these shows not happening and everyone being out of work. So typically when you've got a hot title that's currently happening, on Broadway or in that tour, we're not going to get that right away for a licensing, but it's certainly a show that I could see on our stage at some point.
Alec Baldwin, in an appearance on Inside the Actors Studio with James Lupton, was asked about to name 2 of the greatest performers, 2 of the greatest actors that he had the pleasure of sharing the stage with. One of the names that he shared was Ken Page.
Wow.
And I know that you mentioned Aida, and I'm sure that you're talking about Ken Page. I am one of his official stalkers, as my castmates here will let you know. I've seen him and embarrassed myself every time I see him at Vito's in Grand Center, and proud to do that. But we have a really rich alumni network, being led by the great Ken Page, don't we, when it comes to the Muni Opera? People who have grown up here, people who have gone on to do amazing things. Can you speak to that a little bit, Kwofe?
Yeah, I mean, so Ken will tell this story, and I've heard him say before that this theater was his introduction to musical theater. He remembered seeing shows from the free seats. He remembered earning his equity card here. The fact that a young actor can be in school or have their first opportunity on a stage of this magnitude, and then it give birth to a career is something we see over and over, and it's really fulfilling. We were starting to see Berkeley Going was starred in our Singing in the Rain a couple years ago. I remember Berkeley as a Muny kid. We look at a young lady like Kennedy Holmes, who was on The Voice last year, started on the Muny stage. So it's a place of opportunity, and we see these young people. We look at the Kids and Teens program, for example. Those young people are in these shows, but they're rehearsing along with Broadway stars. They are working for Broadway directors and choreographers and music directors. So they're getting a professional level experience at an early age. And I think that really gives us opportunity to catapult their career. If nothing else, it's the confidence. People always ask me, did I do theater as a kid? No, I just wasn't brave enough. There was no way I was going out on a stage like that. But you see these young kids in that way, and it's really starting those careers. And so you take it all the way up to a Ken Page, who what a storied career. to have it begin here, and for him to be back here in St. Louis, still on this stage, still part of this community, still part of this theater. It's really important for those young people to watch that full trajectory and know that there's an ability to still come back home and do that as well. I won't say I'm high on Ken's stalker list, but we're good friends, and I appreciate his. It's just good to see him around, and you see he's a legend in this town and in this industry, and we're just proud to be a part of Ken's history in our small way.
Kwofe, I'm a sentimental guy, and
Okay.
I cried the last time that you guys had Meet Me in St. Louis. At the end of the show, when the father says, "We'll stay here till we rot," I thought he was speaking to the crowd, and everybody was cheering and crying. I hope you bring that back pretty soon. Meet Me in St. Louis. I mean, it's just perfect for the Muny.
It is. Some people joke that, like, did they write it for the Muny? We did it in our centennial season. Our tagline for that centennial season was right here in St. Louis, because that's what we're about. We're a theater that is made for and by the people of this community. And you're right. There are moments like that can only happen that can only mean a certain thing when they happen on the Muny stage, because we find ourselves inherently tied. It's so strange to see that show, which is kind of set in the park. Yeah. It's an amazing thing.
And I don't think like Oklahoma would mean that to somebody who lives in Oklahoma. I mean,
I agree.
And it wouldn't mean anything, but that Meet Me in St. Louis speaks to us. It was just an emotional night.
Well, I think it's something to be proud of too. There's a show about St. Louis, and again, I don't mean to belabor this point. I just think that sometimes we don't get the best rap externally, so it's really helpful. It's a moment we can sit in there and take pride in the choice of being right here in St. Louis.
Right. Me?
Yep. Great.
Okay. Talk about the finances a little bit. We've talked about all our sentimentality. I know a few years ago you had a capital campaign that I think went pretty well, right?
Yes.
And you've been on the financial side as well as the communication side. Without getting into the weeds, can you give us assurances that you feel good about, because it's a very traditional sort of format, and a lot of us, I think, worry, is it going to last? How well is it going to do down the road? Talk about that a little bit, about our financial kind of stability.
Sure. So as you mentioned, we launched that capital campaign in 2017. We went public with it in 2018, and it was a $100 million campaign. 50 million of it went into brick and mortar or renovation of the campus, and then 50 million in the endowment. And if you've been to the theater, well, no one's been there lately, but when you come back, you'll see, the stage is brand new. The whole campus has been transformed. And really at our 103rd year, we are looking, it's a brand new facility all over again. The second half of that 50 million that goes into the endowment, that is that rainy day. It's the long-term fund. It's the reason why that along with the community support, right? We don't make it without this community. And to answer your question, that's one of the reasons why I feel confident about our future, because we are so inextricably tied to the fabric of this community, given our history and that relationship, that we feel strong in that. The success of that campaign, the success of every season, we have over 22,000 season ticket holders. As Bill mentioned, many of them come back year to year. We have a strong donor base, but all of those things coupled together put us in really pretty strong financial footing. Now, at the end of the day, we are a nonprofit. We are not part of the ZMD. So, outside of the PPP and hopefully the shuttered venue grants that will come out this year, we don't have public funding in that way. But remarkably strong ticket sales over a century, which is weird to say, but over a century, that community support and really prudent leadership. We have an endowment that is in good, strong standing, in good shape, because my predecessors and our board have made strong choices to keep that invested properly and not to overly draw down on that. So we're in a position that we feel good going forward.
30 seconds to go.
Real quick. Now, it used to be, I guess still is, the stage itself is one of the largest like in America and almost in the world too?
95 feet. I don't know another one bigger.
Okay. All right. I do remember that. From a book report I did, I think in 4th grade.
I think we did the same report.
You know, and when Mike Isaacson greets the crowd that first week, that's a long walk to the center microphone. He's got to jog a little bit, so it's good exercise. Thank you so much, Kwofe Coleman, for joining us and sharing your thoughts. Congratulations on your new position. July, we kick off things with 7 brides for 7 brothers, and so it'll be great. Thank you so much, and good luck to everybody at the Muny.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. See you next week at this time.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.